Hello, Wobbly Phil here. When I was but a nipper in the 1970s, there was a common query amongst my mates, usually over milk and a Mars bar during morning break at school, or sometimes sucking on a sneaky senior service behind the bike sheds. Why aren't there more or any diesel-powered bikes? Common answers included too much torque, too much smoke, not so great vibrations, and not enough raw speed. We'd usually end up sniggering at the idea of a two-wheeled tractor. There was no such thing as the internet to go to back then, but fast forward 50 years and I can finally answer that question. Of course, nowadays no one would dream of making a diesel motorcycle, or would they? I'll come to that in a bit. Much of today's fluff is focused on electric bikes, but despite being the proud owner of an electric car, there's nothing on God's great and heavily polluted earth that would persuade me to own an electric motorcycle. I won't go into the whys and wherefores here, I'll save that for another video.
Two wheels. Answer the question. What's next?
Ever since Rudolf Diesel patented his eponymous engine in 1893, only to mysteriously disappear off a passenger ferry in the middle of the North Sea 20 years later, it's been a byword for efficiency, taking the spark plug and associated electrics out of the energy loop and getting compression in the cylinder to do all the work of igniting the fuel was a masterstroke. Diesel engines are powerful, torquey and efficient. Here's a science thing which proves just how efficient they can be. Plus, with no points, ignition or other fandangled electrical doodads to go wrong, they're much more reliable. It's no wonder their natural home is ships, buses, trucks, tractors and trains. But they've become more compact and less smelly over the years. They even sound less like you've got terminal trouble with your tappets or a knackering knock in your big end. Great then, you'd think, for cruising American and Australian highways or the autostradas of Europe on two wheels. But apart from some experimental one-offs, a few nutty conversions and off-road machines for the military, the only diesel motorcycle that went into full-scale mass production came courtesy of our friends at Royal Enfield in the 1980s. I guess perhaps because Herr Diesel originally designed his engine to run on vegetable oil, this bike was ideally suited to rural parts of India where tankers full of refined diesel fuel were probably not making regular deliveries. Clever roadside mechanics had been spotted by Royal Enfield retrofitting diesel engines to their bullets in the 1980s, so they decided they'd get a piece of the action for themselves. This 325cc single-cylinder marvel knocked out 6.5 horsepower and could haul its heavy old 432-pound arse to a top speed of around 40 miles an hour, presumably taking a couple of days to get there. Not much use for getting away from the cops, but at least the smoke screen it left in its wake would prevent them from clocking your number plate. One plus side was the Taurus's ability to go a staggering 211 miles on 1 gallon of whatever old muck you chucked in its tank. Of course, environmental laws caught up with it before the end of the millennium and production was ceased. An Indian tractor manufacturer also took up the idea, and the Swaraj 325 was made around the same time. It's often mistaken for a Royal Enfield Taurus, but they're two completely different bikes with different engines. But just like two strokes, the diesel bike wasn't completely stopped in its tracks by environmental laws. Just like the revived retro brands I covered in last week's video, some folk in the 2000s thought there was a future for oil burners, no doubt egged on by the miraculously clean air coming out of Volkswagen tailpipes at the time. There were business startups promising great things. In 2009, the Track T800 was announced by a Dutch company called Eva Products. Its evil enduro style was pretty striking. You got an 800cc triple Daimler-Benz engine, similar to the one used in the Smart Car, which would very economically blast you from 0 to 60 in just 3 3/4 seconds, with more torque than a BMW R1200 GS. That said, reviewers at the time branded it bizarre, lazy, and crude, with the throttle response described as linear rather than G-force inducing, meaning overtaking had to be planned well in advance, a bit like my old Hinckley Triumph Bonneville then, as if accelerating like your granddad in his 20-year-old Honda Jazz wasn't bad enough. It was also apparently disgusting smelling, shaky, and prone to making weird rumbling noises, rather like granddad himself. I couldn't find any new T800s for sale, just this one pre-loved bike which sold at auction in 2015 for £9,200. At the time it was believed to be the only T800 in the UK. According to reports, the company that made them no longer exists. Then there's this enthusiastic bunch at Axiom Diesel Cycles. They seem to be pitching their diesel bikes at the open roads of America. Not a bad place to start.
So here we are with another big reveal for you. We have the production build. We're building another prototype here, and it is going to be another cruiser, and it is the Axiom Diesel Knight. And so we wanted to show you our powerhouse that we are going to power with an inline 3-cylinder diesel engine.
For the shiny side of 50 grand, they'll build you one of their Paladins to order, with a 1000cc turbo diesel engine pumping out 27 horsepower, it says here. I did find this short video of Axiom dyno testing their bike, although there was too much smoke to read the power and torque figures on the screen. I have to say I couldn't find much news about the company in the last 3 or 4 years. So to return to the question, why aren't more motorcycles diesel powered? Well, I think we answered it in Morning Break all those years ago. They're smelly, dirty, clattering, heavy and tortoise-like. And presumably always will be. Still, some of you are bound to love them, and if you're interested, there's an annual bike meet dedicated to diesel bikes here in the UK, called, fittingly enough, The Big Knock. I'll put a link to their website in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing to let YouTube know we're doing something right here at 3 Phils. Thank you.